Hey there YouTube, how's it going today? It's Adam with Retro Repairs and I got another repair video for you. Today we've got an Atari 7800 Pro system which I'm going to take a look at. The Atari 7800 was a follow-up to the Atari 5200, which was a follow-up to the iconic Atari 2600. This system didn't have a ton of games, had about 59 games to it, but it does also work backwards compatible with all of the Atari 2600 cartridges such as this. So that means you gain access to the entire Atari 2600 collection of over 400 games. A couple differences between this and the 2600 as well. Firstly, the paddles. They have this new kind of joystick with two buttons on them rather than one. You might be used to the original Atari paddles, which just had the one button. This came out towards the late 80s, and it actually came out, it was one of Atari's last systems, so the Jaguar came out after this, but the 7800 came after, I believe Atari was sold to someone that was interested in really taking advantage of their PC capabilities. So it really didn't, it was kind of an afterthought, and by the time that it came out, the NES and the Sega Master System were already out and for quite a while and doing quite well. This is Kona. She seems to like the Ataris, so hopefully we can keep it. But yeah, at that point it was too little too late for Atari, and the system really didn't do very well, but we're going to see what we can do with it. So I got this actually in a local deal. I traded a guy a copy of Killer Instinct for the Super Nintendo and a couple hockey games for this. It also included a collection of about 40 Atari 2600 games. This is just an example of the rest of the stuff that came with it. And this was one of the Atari 2600 paddles. It's actually a third-party one, but just to give you an idea of what it looks like. And then your standard stack of games that go for the Atari 2600. So all in all, a pretty good collection, I think, and a steal of a deal, considering that Killer Instinct's really only about a $10 cartridge. So the guy told me that it's not really working properly, that's why he's wanting to get rid of it, but he wanted to give it to someone that was going to at least attempt to fix it or do something with it, rather than it just sitting in the attic forever. So, hence the deal. I don't have any 7800 games to try with this, but we're going to try Pac-Man. Now, he told me that the issue with this that he was experiencing was the video quality. He said the RF signal was just super fuzzy, didn't really work well, but it worked a little bit if you wiggle the cable around. So it sounds to me like either something's loose inside, could be a shoddy RF connection, or there could just be some corrosion on the terminal itself. So we're going to turn it on and see what it is that we're looking at. So get the TV going. And unlike the Atari 2600, this guy has power button instead of power switches. So, oh yeah, I can definitely see what we're talking about. You see all the fuzz and all the noise. Let's see what happens if I pick this up and kind of wiggle this cord a bit. Not a lot, it's just fuzzy. So, oh, I got some, if I wiggle it, there you go, you got some disconnection. So definitely something affecting the quality of signal there. So what I think I'm actually going to do, let's make sure it actually plays. Yeah, it seems to work otherwise. The controller's smooth. But what I'm going to do is open this up, clean it up, and I think I'm going to do a composite mod to it. So we can get a little better video signal using composite cables rather than the terrible quality that RF gets. So let's crack her open and see what we've got. So getting into the Atari 7800 should be pretty straightforward. Flip it over and it looks like there's 5 screws to get into. Also worth noting, I see some, looks like corrosion in here on that RF shielding. So not sure if that's the contributing factor, if it's from sitting in someone's basement for years, or if it's just got wet. I'm not sure. So opening this up is actually just a regular old Phillips screw, so nothing fancy, no special security screws. And then this should lift just up like that. And we, whoops, get all those screws out. There we go, 5 screws, put that off to the side. And that's the top shell, so really not much to it. There's a couple buttons here, but other than that, really nothing. So we are gonna wash all of this to try and make it look as good as possible, but I'm just gonna put that over to the side for now, and we're gonna focus on this. So this is the inside of the Atari 7800, and as you can see, it's pretty dirty. That's 30 years of dirt and grime and stuff on these switches especially, but also in the back, all around here. So really needs a good solid clean. There are no exposed screws here, so the way to get in is going to be through this RF shielding. So what you have to do, grab a pair of needle nose pliers, and there's a couple little tabs on the side, and they have to be twisted so that you can lift this shielding off. My needle nose might actually be too thick. Yeah, that works. Okay, so all of those are untwisted now. This should lift, oh, actually the whole thing just lifts up. That's fun. So once again, we're gonna put that off to the side and try and lift this shielding off. So now that these tabs have been released, it should come up. Oh, there's one more I missed right here. You may have to find something to kind of pry it a bit, but I really don't like doing that if you don't have to. There we go. So shielding off, and this is what we are left with. So a couple things I'm gonna point out here. Let's zoom in a bit. So just a general overview of what goes on in here. Now you'll have to excuse me, I'm sure I'm gonna misname a couple of these, but my understanding of this system is the Atari 7800 chips are right here. Interestingly, this one is socketed, so I wonder if there was a repair done on this, but anyways, the Atari 7800 chips are here. These ones here, I believe, are the 2600 chips to emulate the Atari 2600 backwards compatibility. So just kind of a little interesting tidbit there. I mean, this board needs a good clean, but I don't see really any issues here. It looks to be in pretty good shape, just really just needs a cleaning. And this is the RF port, which the guy told me he was having issues with. So we're probably going to bypass that RF altogether and just go straight into composite. So let's get the rest of the shielding off and let's clean it up a bit. So probably the smart thing to do is going to be to wash this shell first. So I'm just going to get some soapy water, stuff that in there. You want to be careful with the bottom though, and the reason for that is this sticker. If you value this sticker here, it's paper sticker, so if you submerge it fully, it's going to get ruined. Instead, what I'm going to do is grab a toothbrush, some soap, and just give it a good scrub. Try and get it as clean inside and out as possible. You can see how dirty that looks. So I'm going to work on that before I clean the board, and then we'll get back to the board. Now, another thing you'll want to do is tackle this rust here on the shielding. To do so, I'm just going to use some white vinegar. I'm going to pour it on there nicely. Just kind of let it sit there, and using a toothbrush, kind of work it in there a bit. And then I'm going to find something that I can pool a bit of vinegar in just to let it soak and try and reverse some of this rust. So now I've just got it sitting in this baking dish here, pooled in some white vinegar, and you're going to let it kind of sit there and neutralize some of the rust. You'll note a toothpick under it. I just put that underneath so that the rusted part's not sitting directly on the metal here. I want to make sure that the vinegar is getting at it and working properly. So we're going to leave that while I do the rest of the work and come back later, check it out, and see what the status is. Now, cleaning the board is pretty straightforward as well. Before you really get into it, you'll probably want to try and remove this heat sink if you can. Actually, it's thermal pasted on. We'll just clean it. This cartridge port is actually blocking access to it, and I have no intention of desoldering the cartridge connector. So let's get cleaning. Really all you need, isopropyl alcohol, 99% is the best option, and a toothbrush. Get your toothbrush wet and get the board wet. It's pretty straightforward. I'm not going to make you watch me do the whole board, just kind of giving you a good idea of what it is I'm doing. Try and get in all the grooves, get the dust off. If there's any flux left over from soldering, get that off. Get all the grime and junk and everything just off. Okay, so I've given it a bit of a clean. You can see all the crap on my mat here, but looks a bit better. It's not by any means 100% fixed or clean or anything, but I got the big chunks of dust out of here, just trying to really tidy it up a bit, make it look a bit neater. Underside of the board also looks good. I don't really see any real trouble areas. Maybe over here, I don't know if this kind of discoloring, if that's due to that corrosion on the RF shielding. It's possible, but there's no traces or anything on this side, so it's not really anything that I think is going to spread or cause issues. So to give you an idea, this board here, 1984 it was made, so a little bit, I think the NES came out in 85 in 85 in North America, but in Japan it came out prior to that, the Famicom did. So just to kind of give you a rough timeline here. So now, I guess what we should get to doing is building the S-video circuit. So I'm going to get the stuff I'm going to need, and I'll show you what we're going to do. All right, so the first thing that it's going to get us to do is actually cut the RF pins right here. They want you to cut these straight off and take off this little board that's on the side here. Because we're going to use those as the points to pull the video and the 5 volts and ground from. Now personally, I really don't like that idea. I don't want to do something to this board that I can't reverse. So instead, I'm just going to remove this. Now the instructions also recommend removing R3 and R5 right here. So I'm going to desolder all these parts and then show you the result once it's complete. All right, so we've got all the big parts removed. We've got this RF adapter, which has been removed right here. Did not cut the pins, wanted to keep everything as intact as possible in case I need to put it back together, say this mod just doesn't work. We've removed R3 and R5, and you can also remove this RF switch if you like. Doesn't really serve a purpose without the RF modulator here. There is one final thing that there's kind of an optional step here, and it's for a couple special games. So the Atari 7800 has, one of the big downfalls of it is poor sound. It uses the same sound chip as the Atari 2600. To circumvent that on certain games, they actually integrated the sound chip right in a couple cartridges. So those games won't work on this mod unless you remove one more component, which is C10 right up here in the corner. So this is going to be underneath this RF modulator, second in from the, sorry, kind of hard to see, this green one here, the second one in from the cartridge slot. So I'm going to remove the switch and that capacitor right there, and that should be it for removals. So now that all the parts are removed, I'm going to set this aside and we're going to work on building the circuit. So I've got a couple of parts that we need for that. I'm going to build this circuit just on a little project board here. And for that, what we need is a few resistors, transistor, soldering tools, of course, and some wire. So I've found some schematics online, which build this circuit as we want, and I kind of drew up how I want to lay it out so that it will use up the least amount of space. What I want to do first is kind of crudely build it on this board here, and just so that I can test it to make sure that the console's working properly and there's not other underlying issues. If it works properly, then I'm going to condense it and make it look a little bit nicer. So I guess let's get started. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do, get all the components lined up the way that I need them to. So I'm going to start with this resistor here, and a couple ways you can do it. You can do it kind of roughly. You stick it in the hole, bend it, and stick the other side in the hole. Or you can try and preform it a little bit, which I find just kind of looks a little bit nicer. So I'll go that way. So bend this down, and then try and line it up so that I can get it right in there. Perfect, so that's one of them. One way to do this, if you don't have a helping hand to hold the board, you can just kind of bend these legs off to the side a bit, and that helps to hold the part in place. And then on to the next one. Transistor goes beside here. So just to make sure, I don't want to cut any of these leads yet, so I'm going to use up pretty much this whole board so that I don't have to really alter anything. And now I can solder all these into place. So good idea to hit them all with a little bit of flux. It'll make it easier to solder as well as desolder the components when I need to remove them. Then clean your tip off. And then we just go ahead and solder. Just make sure, oh, getting low battery. Hopefully we can kind of see this. And I kind of got a bit of a glare, so it's not going to look the greatest. Actually, quite a bit of glare. I can barely see it now. All right, so that is the finished work there. So all of these components are soldered into place nicely. They're not going anywhere. And if we can get a good view on this side, you can even see the solders starting to come through on the other side. So we have solid solder connections on both sides of the board here. So that's good. Moving on, I need to run some wires to it. So I'm going to actually do this bit off camera and then come back. I'll show you what it is that I've got going on here, and we can hook this up and test it to make sure that it works the way that I'm envisioning it working. Okay, so this is just the very rough board. As you can see, there's wires everywhere. It's by no means going to be a final product, but it's just something that I want to test to see if it actually is functional. So on this side are the inputs. So I have ground as the white. I believe 5 volts is black and video is red, and then outputs, it outputs ground and video. I'm not worrying about audio, as audio is pulled actually directly from the board. It doesn't have to go through this, so we knew that audio worked before I open it up just fine, so I'm going to presume that it will pass through just fine as well. So I'm going to get this connected to the board. I'm going to show you how to do that quickly, and we'll go test this, see how it works. Okay, so this part now is going to focus on these 4 pins, or these 4 holes right here, and we're going to basically solder these into place. So I'm just lightly kind of tacking them in. All I want to do, because this is testing, it's not going to be a permanent thing, so heat up the solder, dip the pin in, let it cool. Next one is 5 volts, which I said was the black wire. So 5 volts goes in the second hole from the bottom. Sorry, ground was the first on the bottom. So second from the bottom, put it in, let it cool. And then the third one is my video signal. So video goes in the second from the top. And there we go. In this configuration, this top hole is not used. I guess it might supply audio to the RF modulator, but my guess is it's altered. What we're actually going to hook it up to is somewhere else on the board here. I have to look to see for reference where that's going to be. Now we're going to hook up the other side to an RCA plug. So let's get that out. So this is just going to be, once again, just going to be transmitting the video signals. So I'm not worried about really anything other than ground and video. So let's get some solder on my iron. Tin up this ground pin here. And then we should, if I put this all together, kind of doing this with just one hand, so it may be somewhat difficult to achieve. Hopefully we can see that still. Not bad, yep. That should hold, yep. And then same thing for the pin, so let's tighten that a bit. Put this right in that hole there. It's not really very good. Let's get some more solder and try again. Oh, sorry, we can't really see that. I'm not having much luck with that. That should do the trick. There we go. So that is now wired up. So let's go to the TV and see if it works. All right, so this is an example of how it looks currently hooked up in its testing phase. You'll note I have the board upside down. Just the reason being I don't want to push any of these pins off to the side and short anything. So I have it upside down. I have the RCA plug out here connected to a video cable going into my TV, and we have Frogger connected. So let's turn it on and moment of truth. Oops. And there's Frogger, and actually that looks pretty good. I don't see really, you remember how fuzzy it was before? And I'm not seeing any of that. You'll note here on the side, on the camera, it looks like it's picking up some weird lines, but I'm not seeing that at all in real life. So I think that's just an odd effect of the camera here. But if we hit restart, should be able to, let's make sure I can play it. What are we doing here? Oh, there we go. It's kind of difficult with one hand. And also there's no audio because I haven't hooked up the audio yet, but quite clearly it does work. So let's turn this off. And my dog has lost the ball under the steps here apparently, so I gotta deal with that right now. But we're gonna tidy this up, make it look a lot nicer, and install it to the cleaned out system shell that I have, and we'll see how it looks at the end. So now that test seemed to have worked out nicely, I'm going to remove all of this and wire it up neater so that it's all contained into a short little board rather than this whole long piece here. I mean, this would work. I could mount it probably there somewhere, but it's all over the place. Less wiring is always better. If you can get a more direct route with the wires, it's going to be a much better looking, much better performing board. So I'm going to get all this stuff removed from here, and then I'll show you how I'm going to wire it up again. Alright, so I've got the board kind of laid out the way that I like it. Now, you might be looking at this and wondering, why have you cut out a little notch here? And why have I moved the pins from the old RF board, which is right here? Why have I moved them onto this? Well, I had a thought. I really don't like ripping apart old game cases more than I really need to. So my thought was I would tuck all of this equipment in the existing RF shielding, add a second RCA port on the plug on the out side, and I can reuse the same hole, just slightly expanding it a bit to kind of be a less intrusive modification. So I haven't seen this done before, so I'm pretty excited to see how this actually turns out. So let's get to soldering and wiring this up. So I've already got the components in place that I want, and I went ahead and soldered these pins on. So let's just flip it over and get soldering. So let's try and zoom in nicely for you. All right, so those components are in place now. We got some nice solder connections there. Flip it over and we see that the solder's also come through the board on the other side, filling those holes nicely. So it means we have nice even solder connections on both sides. Now we just clip them. So I'm not going to clip them super short yet, so I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail on each of these. The reason being, I need to come in and I need to connect wires to them, and on the off chance I put something in backwards, I want it to be easy enough to grab and remove. Once everything's in nicely, I'm going to go back and shorten these. But that's that. So I'm going to I'm going to wire this up, and I'll show you a couple of things. I'm not going to show you the whole wiring process, but let's get this started, and I'll be back about halfway through. All right, so I'm partway through here. I'm just going to give you kind of an update on what I'm doing. So I've got my components soldered into place. You see this little leg poking out? This is actually going to be the video out. It's going to connect, see if I can get it in here nicely for you to see. So if I get it in here, this little pin is actually going to go right in place in this RCA plug. Well, I got to bend it in there anyways. It's going to go through this hole and solder it into place. So it's just a little bit better connection than running a loose wire to it. So this, just to kind of give you a breakdown of what's happening, we've got it coming from the video pin to the end of these two resistors, which are bridged together underneath. Then we have a jumper going into this transistor, which sends our video out to here. This next one I'm doing is the 5-volt feed. So the 5-volt has to go to this top resistor right here. So what I'm going to do, I need to put a little bit of a loop in it again so that I can get it over top of this. You'll note that I purposely cut out this one side of it so that I'd have room to kind of work in here and get the parts in where I need them to. Let's actually bend this into place properly. There we go. So that's kind of how it's gonna sit. Let's try and just hold that there. So I need this to flip over, and then it's going to connect to this resistor, which is right here. So having that, I'm going to get my cutters, cut it just like so. And we need to strip the end. You can use a wire stripper or something this small. You can actually kind of just work it with the cutters and rip the sheathing off, and there we have. That's all really you need. You don't need a lot. Just a little bit will do as far as exposed wire. So let's get this board out and do this connection right here. So what I say, top resistor, yep, 5 volts. So I'm gonna add a little more solder to this. You know, this one actually doesn't have a ton of solder on it, so let's top it up. Just make it easier to add this wire to it later, or now. There we go. I'm also going to tin the end here, and what tinning is just adds a little bit of solder to what it is that we're looking to solder. Makes it easier for it to stick. Now, this is where having one of those helping hand tools comes in handy, but you can do it just with a pair of tweezers or a finger. So let's get it pushed in there nicely. Yeah. Dropped it. There we go. And that should do. So looking at it, that's in there pretty well. Give it a little tug. If a little tug pulls it out, it's obviously not soldered well enough. So don't be afraid to move it a bit, wiggle it, make sure that it's really in there. So the trick now is going to be getting all of these lined up with the holes on those plugs. So there's one actually right away. So I'm going to bend that over and solder it right now. Okay, so that one is good. And then this guy, it's going to be tricky since it's so deep in there. So I'm going to need to get my tweezers and kind of play with it a little, I think. And then let's do that. All right, so that should be good. What I'm going to do before I do anything else is just kind of review it off camera, make sure I'm not missing any connections. Then let's hook it into the console and give it a test. So now that we have the board pretty much ready to go, there is one more thing we got to do, and that is to hook into the audio. So we're not grabbing the audio out of these pins. To be honest, I'm not sure why. I assume there's some processing done to it to get it ready. But my understanding is we're going to grab it from this one right here, that little hole there, and that's going to give us the best audio quality signal. So to do that, it's pretty straightforward. There's actually a hole in the board. So I'm going to heat this up. Actually, no, I lied. I'm going to remove the solder from it, and we're going to put some new solder in. There we go. So I can stick that wire straight in, and then flip the board over. and this is the spot where it's coming out, so I can fold it a little bit flat. I'm gonna put some, just get some solder on my tip here quickly, and then tack it in place. So that wasn't a complete joint, but now that it's kind of roughly tacked in there, I can heat it up, apply some solder, and fill that completely. So now flip it over, and that cable's going nowhere. We do also have to grab it from up here at the top of C10. The reason for that is this is where the audio signal comes from. If you have one of the Atari 7800 games that has its own built-in audio chip, so otherwise you're not going to get any audio from certain 7800 titles. So let's run that in there. I need to clean that more. Nope, should be good. So let's put that in. And then tack it into place. I have a feeling I lost it. Nope, no, it's still there. And that's not going anywhere either, so perfect. So we're gonna move those wires off to the side, zoom out a little bit. And now we're gonna get this installed where it needs to be, which is right in there. So, let's see here. I'm wondering if I can put this cap back on. No, I need to do some serious trimming to it. You know what? Nah, forget it. So, back to this. You gotta get it lined up nicely. First thing you want to do is get these small little pins in the holes, and then you worry about the grounding posts. And that is sitting nicely. So let's solder in these 3 posts. I'm not going to solder down the grounding posts quite yet. Actually, I should probably put 1 in, because that's what's going to carry the ground to the RCA plugs. All right, that should be good. Right there. Yep, looks fine. So let's solder down one of them. Let's do this one right here. Cool. Now the last step is this audio right here. So if you remember, I bent the pin out so that it was not going to be connecting. One thing I do need to do is trim that a bit, but let's bend it up so that it's really out of the way. Cut it down a little bit. Let's get that out. Okay. And then let's get the light out of here if we can. Now what I'm going to do is tin this a bit, get some solder on the end. And I'm going to get these wires. I'd like to get them as short as possible, so right about like that I think would be good. So I'm going to strip them and solder them onto place, so I'm going to skip to that. Okay, so that's pretty much complete. We've got the audio coming from this point right here into that pin, which is now routed into that RCA plug. the audio from it's called the Pokey audio from the chip that's inside the cartridge, also going to that same input, which is going straight to there. The 5-volt video and the ground is now going into here. And I'm just curious, I assume that this shell is grounded here, but I just want to be sure. So running my multimeter continuity mode, I should get continuity like this. And that's what we want to see. So we want to see that the outside of the RCA plugs are grounded. Oops. And the shell is grounded. Everything's grounded there. So we are good. Let's get this hooked up and give it a test. All right, so I've got it all hooked up here, and we'll see if it works. So far, so good. So I would say successful. All right, so now that we've tested this and we know that it works, the next step is going to be modifying the case. So I've lined it up here just to see what it is needs to change. And as we can see right here, the original hole is cut out, but we need to widen that now for the new one. So guess basically what I need to do is drill a new hole through here and then file away anything left over. All right, so let's grab drill, line it up the way we like it, and start drilling. So there's our pilot hole. So now that we've got that, work our way up. So that was, what did I say that was? 1/8, I think. 7/64. So let's go to 9/64. Basically, I'm going up, I got a set of drill bits here. I'm going up 2 sizes each time. So number 2. That was 9/64. So now we'll try 11/64. And then, biggest one that I've gotten here, but what did I say that was? 3/8. So you do want to be careful that you're not grabbing it too hard and cracking anything. So that's what that looks like. Let's see if that's big enough. I suspect it isn't. So not quite. I'm not getting, this board isn't going all the way down. So why is that? Oh, because of these stupid pins. Let's put this, let's screw that. Not quite. I can't actually plug anything into that. So we need to make this hole a little bit larger. So in this case now, since there's so little plastic left there, I'm going to come in with my cutters. Take it away. I'm going to have to come back and probably file all this, but let's try and just really scrape it down as much as we can. And same thing on the top side. We need to get rid of this right here. So this plastic's actually cutting nicely. I've had, when I was researching the video mod for this, I've heard a lot of complaints about and that's what we got. So that doesn't look too bad. I'm gonna try a test to make sure that it fits in, but I think otherwise that's looking pretty good. All right, so I had to do a little more trimming, but this is approximately how much space you need to leave for it. So it is quite a hole now, but you can plug in 2 plugs using that type of space. So I need to go back and file this to make it just look better. It's pretty jagged and crappy. Problem is I cannot find my files. I'm pretty sure I have a whole bunch of them, but for now, we're just going to close it up. I'll show you how it looks after cleaning up the shell, and that'll be it for this video. So putting it together is, again, pretty straightforward. Probably the trickiest part is going to be lining up these stupid little tabs for the shielding here. So get it lined up. I mean, you could probably leave the shielding off and nothing would happen, but I don't like removing parts from a system if I really don't have to. So in this case, it's going back. The real pain is this one here behind the cartridge slot. And there we go. Crap. Right there. This one bent out, so straighten that up. Cool, so I think we're good. If you remember, originally they were all twisted. I'm only going to twist the ones that are easy to get to, because this kind of shielding is pretty stupid. It doesn't really serve a lot of a purpose either. It's there to meet international regulations so that you can sell it in certain countries, like FCC regulations in the US and whatever they do in Europe, but there. That's on. That's not going anywhere. So let's slide it into place there. There should be a few screws that need to go in, and I lied. There are no screws holding it in place. It's held together by the shell. So let's throw the shell in. That can't be right. Yeah, there are no screws holding it in place. So, on second thought, maybe this shielding is necessary. Seems to hold everything together. So, put the shielding back. Don't listen to whatever I said before where I told you it's optional. It doesn't seem to be optional. So, word of advice. If you remember at the beginning of the video, I used a drill to remove these screws. I don't recommend doing that to put the screws back. And the reason for that is if you drive the screws in crooked, you're going to strip the plastic. And it's a lot easier to catch yourself with a screwdriver than it is with a drill. So, and there we have it. So that's the shell after nice cleaning. So, I mean, this bit's pretty scratched up still, but it's not bad. It's a lot cleaner and looks a lot better than it did before. That's the video and audio out. So just for reference, the black is video and the white is audio in this case. Power in. The RF switch has been removed, so it no longer functions. But otherwise, minimal damage to the shell itself. I see a lot of times people mounting them here, and sometimes even here, which I find really odd, because why would you want cables coming out the bottom and looping back? I saw one where a guy mounted it here, which was not a bad place, I think. But either way, I think that's it's a lot better of a location, and nice that you don't have to tear apart this shell. So that's it for today. I really appreciate you watching. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. I really appreciate you watching and subbing, and we'll see you next time.